So Mike Tomlin and the Steelers have not had a losing season in 21 seasons. Whew. But there's a story this morning. Is the hot seat heating up? Well, he hasn't won a playoff game in 8 years. He would be fired if he was the Eagles coach or the Cowboys coach. He would be fired if he was, the New England coach, the San Francisco coach, the Green Bay coach. Green Bay, you got to win playoff games. He'd be fired if he was the Ravens coach. But in Pittsburgh, it's old school. And they take pride in stuff like we have not had a losing season in 21 years. I want you to think about that. I went and looked this up this morning. In that same stretch, 21 seasons, to show you how little that means, we haven't had a losing season. In that same stretch, 21 seasons, 60 NFL teams with winning records missed the playoffs. Winning record doesn't mean anything. It doesn't guarantee anything. In 21 seasons, 4 times they were 500. Another 4, they were a game over. What does it mean? It's just an arbitrary number. So let me give you 4 or 5 teams that in 21 seasons have had losing seasons. The Chiefs, Philadelphia, Rams, Tampa Bay, the Patriots. They bottom out. They have losing seasons. So, this whole thing about Mike Tomlin not having a losing season. Let me throw this at you. You know who has the longest streak in the NBA of not having a losing season? I want you to think about this. Give it 10 seconds. What NBA franchise has the longest streak of non-losing seasons? The Clippers, 14. In their own city, the Lakers make fun of the Clippers. Jeannie Buss, the former owner, used to make fun of the Clippers privately and publicly. They were a laughingstock. Didn't matter if Steve Ballmer had 10 times the net worth. The Clippers are like the eye roll of Los Angeles. And they got good people in the building. And Ty Lue's, you're the Clippers. You got a bunch of banners, but it's just, to me, Pittsburgh is, it's a small city. I get it. It's old school. You go to a party in Pittsburgh, you talk about, it's like St. Louis. Where'd you go to high school?
All right, let's get into it. Look, I have to say, I spent some time living in Pittsburgh, and it is a phenomenal city. It truly is. The people are fantastic. Some of the most genuine and kind individuals you'll ever meet. It's also an incredibly livable place with no shortage of things to do. Let's not minimize what Pittsburgh has to offer. It's home to some of the country's top universities. It's a powerhouse for nursing and medical fields. And on those days when it's not overcast and rainy, the scenery is absolutely beautiful. You have the University of Pittsburgh right there. You have Carnegie Mellon down the street. So what exactly are we trying to diminish here? Let's put a stop to this nonsense right now. Seriously, come on. Let's focus on the actual topic at hand. It's honestly triggering me that we're now taking cheap shots at the city of Pittsburgh itself. Before we dive deep into this discussion, a quick reminder. Please hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch this video all the way through. Without a doubt, this is the most effective way to support the growth of this channel, enabling me to continue producing the highest quality Pittsburgh Steelers content possible. Now let's have this conversation. Yeah, I'm listening. And I do concur that the whole never having a losing season accolade is overvalued. I am in complete agreement on that front. 2 opposing ideas can be true simultaneously. It can be a genuinely impressive feat, and it can also be somewhat insignificant or inflated in its importance. Mike Tomlin is a tremendous coach. He is a phenomenal leader and an incredibly competent football mind. Therefore, the fact that he has never presided over a season with a losing record is without question noteworthy. However, it is not the sole measure of success. It is not the entirety of the story. It cannot serve as a perpetual shield, a badge of honor you constantly flash to deflect all other forms of criticism. That is unnecessary. That is an overinflation of a single statistic. We can look at a figure like Bill Belichick, whose teams have experienced significant downturns. We can all acknowledge that Belichick has obviously won far more championships and achieved a greater pinnacle of success. Yet, we can also argue that it is remarkably impressive that Mike Tomlin, regardless of who has been under center at quarterback or the various circumstances he's faced, has never allowed this franchise to sink to the profound depths that even a Belichick-led team has encountered. And yes, that is impressive in its own right. It is a unique form of accomplishment. But ultimately, in the National Football League, the goal isn't merely to maintain a high floor. It's about elevating the ceiling. And that is what a coach like Bill Belichick, though now past his prime, was able to deliver. That is what an Andy Reid provides, what a Sean McVay brings. And that dimension matters. It absolutely matters. So, yes, the question must be asked. Should Mike Tomlin's seat be warm? Without a doubt. Of course it should. That is the nature of this business. Furthermore, it has been a very, very long time since this team last won a championship. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, and it feels like a different era now. A really long time has passed. The core issue is this. Mike Tomlin is a great leader. The insights that come from his press conferences are always sharp. He is incredibly well-spoken, organized, and perceptive. When you listen to him articulate his vision, you can't help but be convinced. You think, this man knows exactly what he's doing. So when the team falls short of expectations, your instinct is to absolve him. You think, how could I possibly want to fire this guy? He can't be the problem. He understands the game on a different level. However, the troubling reality is that the Steelers' defense, which was once his hallmark, has not been performing at an elite level for some time now. That, to me, is the most significant concern. It would be one thing if he consistently fielded a top-tier defensive unit, similar to what we've seen from the Cleveland Browns at times, the formidable defense the Kansas City Chiefs have developed, or the Philadelphia Eagles' defensive prowess. But we are not witnessing that from Pittsburgh anymore. That is the paramount problem. If he still had that defensive dominance, the conversation would be entirely different. We would be saying, okay, Mike Tomlin is clearly struggling to figure out the offensive side of the ball and the quarterback position. The solution is to invest heavily and secure the best offensive coordinator available. We need a top-tier mind to run that offense so that Coach Tomlin can continue to be the overarching leader and defensive mastermind. It would be a simple, clean solution. Find our quarterback, hire a brilliant OC, pay him a fortune to ensure stability, and everything falls into place. Then you could realistically expect to make a serious run. But that scenario is not the current reality. That option isn't even on the table. So, for me, this is where the conversation naturally progresses. This is the point where I find myself genuinely pondering what the organization should do with Mike Tomlin at this juncture. And if you do decide to hire a new head coach, the path forward is murky. I've been examining the potential candidate pool, and many of the teams with vacancies are looking for coordinators or new head coaches. It's interesting because I look at the options and I'm not entirely sure where you turn right now. In previous off seasons, there was a clearly defined and legitimate group of candidates where you could confidently say, this is a risk worth taking, or this is a solid hire. I am not as confident about what that answer is for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a uncertainty compounded by the fact that they do not have a definitive answer at the quarterback position for the long term. You hear commentators like Nick Wright floating ideas like trading for Kyler Murray, but that feels like just continuing the cycle of half measures. You cannot operate that way. The franchise needs to identify its quarterback of the future, a player who can usher in a new era for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is an absolute necessity. But make no mistake, you require the right coach to partner with that quarterback, whether that is an offensive-minded head coach or an elite offensive coordinator. It is truly a shame that we haven't been able to see Mike Tomlin paired with a truly great quarterback in recent years. And to be fair, Tomlin himself deserves a portion of the blame for not being able to make that happen, for failing to identify and develop the next franchise signal caller. He is the head coach, and the ultimate responsibility falls on him. So he will shoulder some of the blame for that. How much of it is his direct responsibility? I don't know. It depends on the level of autonomy he has in personnel decisions regarding the quarterback room. Was it his directive to pursue Aaron Rodgers? Was it his call to bring Mason Rudolph back? Was he the primary voice advocating for drafting Kenny Pickett? And what about the decision to move on from George Pickens? Look at what Pickens is accomplishing now with a quarterback like Dak Prescott. It's devastating. It serves as a direct indictment of the Steelers' evaluation and of Mike Tomlin. As I mentioned in my other Steelers video yesterday, you could theoretically have both of those players right now. The financials actually make sense in the short term. I'm not saying you could keep them both long term, but you could have had them on the roster this season. Absolutely. Imagine Aaron Rodgers throwing to DK Metcalf and George Pickens. That is an offensive combination that could be producing at an extremely high level right now. And it's not like the Steelers received a monumental return in a trade for him either. It wasn't a situation where you netted 3 first-round picks and freed up a massive amount of cap space, a move that would be universally understood as a legitimate strategic decision. That simply wasn't the outcome. I always believe it is fair to critique individuals in these high-stakes situations, particularly when expectations are sky-high and when you have a reputation for greatness. You are held to a higher standard. And especially for a franchise as iconic and historically successful as the Pittsburgh Steelers, that scrutiny is not just warranted, it is expected. As the saying goes, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You cannot constantly point to past achievements, whether it's a previous Super Bowl win or a streak of non-losing seasons, and expect that to suffice. You cannot keep deferring the conversation. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They hired Doug Peterson, and he won them a Super Bowl. A couple of years later, they decided, we don't believe you are the right person to lead us forward anymore. And that ultimately proved to be the correct decision. They moved on from him. If they don't win in the next couple of seasons under Nick Sirianni, he will be gone too. If they conclude that Jalen Hurts isn't the elite quarterback they thought, they will move on from him as well. The league's motto is adapt or get left behind. Consider the Los Angeles Rams. They had Jared Goff, who took them to a Super Bowl. They looked at the situation and said, no, he is not good enough to elevate us to the very top in this specific moment. They aggressively went out, acquired Matthew Stafford, and boom, they won a championship. You have to be aggressive. The New England Patriots hired a coach, quickly realized it wasn't the right fit, fired him immediately, brought in Jared Mayo, and are now rebuilding their identity. Sean Payton arrived in Denver, assessed the quarterback situation, and declared, Russell Wilson, you are not the answer here, and moved on. That decision has already proven to be the correct one, just as the Steelers decided, no, we are okay with our current situation, a stance that has kept them in a state of mediocrity. Meanwhile, look at how quickly a team can transform. The Denver Broncos, after making that tough decision, went to the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade and are now competing for a first-round bye and home field advantage in the AFC. The landscape of the NFL can shift incredibly fast, but to catalyze that change, you must be bold. You have to be willing to take big, calculated swings. However, you also need a coherent vision and a concrete plan. If you are just making frantic moves without a strategic direction, you end up like the Carolina Panthers or the Cleveland Browns, perpetually stuck in a cycle of failure. Nobody wants that. But the alternative to chaotic change cannot be standing pat and doing nothing at all. Stagnation is not a strategy. So, those are my thoughts. I am absolutely eager to hear yours. What do you all think about the Pittsburgh Steelers? Should Mike Tomlin be on the hot seat? Should the organization consider firing him outright? I would particularly love to hear the perspectives from Steelers fans. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I read every single comment that comes through. So, whether you find yourself in full agreement with me or you think I'm completely off base, let's get some discussions started. Let's have some spirited debates. But at the end of the day, let's just have some fun with it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We are building a truly amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to have you as a part of it. My goal is to create something we all feel genuinely connected to, something we are truly excited to be involved with. I believe we are well on our way to achieving that. Also, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely helps with visibility in the platform's algorithm. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.